Hey guys, today on Practicing Catholic, we're talking about prayer and why is it so hard? The Catechism highlights, well, what makes it difficult? And it says, first, it's ourselves, which is so true.
Is it necessary to pay attention when you're praying? Here's the way St. Thomas prays it.
Okay.
This is straight out of the Summa.
Okay, we're failing in the lightning aspect of the lightning round. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add, but the one thing that I have thought, my wife and I have talked.
I thought you didn't have anything to add.
I do, but it's not, your answer was
But
perfect.
Taylor likes to talk.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Practicing Catholic, the show where we discuss the often arduous but always fruitful practice of holiness in everyday life. I'm Taylor Kemp.
And I am Dr. Scott Heffelfinger.
Today we're talking about prayer, everybody. So, Scott, there I was, being a practicing Catholic and praying.
Yes.
I know, doing great. And I was praying, and then I said to myself, Self, you're not even praying. You're not even paying attention. You're so bad at this. That is a common experience that I have of not being so great at prayer. So here's the question for us to discuss. Why am I so bad at prayer? Why is prayer so difficult?
I have to think that's a universal
I hope
experience
so.
where you're just kind of like, here I am doing my thing. At least I think I'm doing my thing. But if it's my thing, then it's not God's
Then it's the
thing.
wrong thing.
Am I even praying? What am I doing here?
And then the alarm goes off, prayer time's ended, and you're like,
Do you set an alarm for your prayer time?
I don't, but I'll keep an eye on the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Things to do, work to get to.
Yes. Well, it is hard.
It is hard.
Prayer is hard.
Like, it genuinely is hard. Yeah. So we should talk about that.
Yeah.
Because we've experienced it. We talk about it. You've taught it. And unless you are a saint out there, and actually that's not even true because the saints struggled with prayer too, you have experienced it as well. So why don't we start with just prayer in the Christian life? Why should we pray?
Yeah, well, I think, with prayer, so you mentioned that I teach, and I do get to teach about prayer in the graduate school here, which is a lot of fun, and has been very fruitful for me, but it is a different experience than actually praying. Like, I think I'm better at teaching prayer than actually praying, and I try to be kind of honest with my students about that too, that when I teach prayer, it's not that I'm a master of prayer. Thankfully, we have the saints who are the masters. And if we look to those masters about, like, why should we pray? I think we start to see answers about prayer being a relationship, prayer being an expression of friendship, about prayer being an opportunity to ask God for things. So there are lots of reasons to pray, and they're good reasons. But I think it just highlights all the more the question that you asked at first, which is, like, if there are good reasons to pray, and if we kind of know them, and we can talk more about them, but, like, why is it so hard? Like, why can't we stay focused? Why do we have trouble committing to prayer?
Yep.
And these are good questions. I think for myself, and I think generally you could say in the spiritual tradition, there's a way, it can almost sound like a cop-out answer when it's kind of like, well, the problem is pride, kind of like the root of all sin.
You're like, it's true, perhaps
It's
oversimplified to be helpful.
Yes. And I think when it becomes a little more helpful is if we can ask, like, well, how is it true in this case?
Yep.
And I think when it comes to prayer, it can actually be really hard to begin from a posture of humility.
Yep.
And that is so important. Like, I was thinking the other day, we work closely together. We know that there's lots of things going on. It has been very, very busy.
Yep.
And when it gets busy, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one, but if I am, I still own it, that there's this temptation to kind of be like, you know what? I've got so much to do. Like, maybe I'll just shorten or skip kind of like a longer stretch of prayer today. But as I was thinking about this temptation the other day, I was just realizing, like, wow, that line of thinking is very confused. It's actually kind of absurd because
It is, yes.
we can't do what we do without God and without His help. And you can't give what you don't have. And so from that perspective, I had to catch myself and just sort of almost laugh at myself, like, what are you thinking? Like there's no way you can do this work that God has given to you if you're not spending time with him, if you're not asking him for help.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to acknowledge that for those of us that are seeking to live a Catholic life, to live in union with God, that is still such a temptation. Like, we work at a Catholic apostolate. There's tons of people out there that want to love the Lord better and better every day.
Mm-hmm.
And how prevalent or how subtle this can still get in there. So yeah, like it's something that I face all the time, that the reality is, which is a sad reality, I wish it were otherwise, that when push comes to shove and busyness stacks up and the kids and the work and the this and the that, it's like, it's almost the easiest thing to let fall off the docket or shorten or compromise. And there's a great line from the Catechism. I love the Catechism's just section on prayer generally. It's really beautiful, and it truly is worthwhile praying through. It's the fourth section. But the paragraph that I'm going to quote here is paragraph 2726, which is in the second, it's in Article 2 on the battle of prayer. But it has this line that rings so true to me, that says this: many Christians unconsciously regard prayer as an occupation that is incompatible with all the other things that they have to do. They don't have the time. And I was like, oh, the Catechism.
Just call it out.
They called it out.
On the nose. I love it.
And it's good because it says many Christians. These are people who want to pray. I want to pray. I intellectually know it's important to pray. Unconsciously regard prayer as an occupation that is incompatible with the other things that they have to do. They don't have the time. And then the second paragraph there talks about the mentality of this present world. And what it goes on to say, and what has definitely been true to my experience, is like we have this industrious, productive mindset. Like all of us want to bear fruit in our lives. That's good. We want to affect the world in which we live. We're called to do that. We're called to cooperate with God in shaping the reality for the better around us. So we are called to act. However, if we think in a, as it says, a this present world mindset, we can think that all activity is only that, the activity that kind of shapes this world. Mm-hmm. And not only can we be mistaken in that that's the only activity that matters, it's also thinking that that activity is more important than the invisible kind of activity. And that is just so prevalent.
And that was like in this recent, kind of ongoing conversation with God, I felt like the takeaway at the end that God, sort of gave to me was basically God saying to me, when I view prayer in this way of like, I got to make a choice here, I got to just do the things. When you view it in that way, what it reveals is that you are more confident in your own abilities than in mine. And
that's
that was
true.
like...
Yeah, I mean, deep down, like that's true.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where pride, we started off with pride. Like pride is the root of all evil and of sin and all of that. And now we've kind of like honed in, like that is how it expresses itself often, I think, in prayer, where it's kind of like, at the end of the day, if I have to pick and choose, who am I going to rely on to sort of get the work done and do the things I need to do? I'm always tempted to rely on myself. Like, I think I can do this better than relying on God's help when I ask him for help.
Which is
and
such
I think
a lie.
another reason that we sort of can take that approach is, why is it hard to pray? I think there's another question that's really closely related to that. It's sort of like, is anything happening here? Like, what's going on in prayer? Is anything being accomplished? Why is nothing happening? Right? And I think, to come back a little bit in the direction of what prayer is, I think it's important to kind of see that something is happening in prayer. But the things that happen in prayer are basically all, typically, there are exceptions, some kind of marvelous exceptions, but typically there are things that are slow and gradual. And I think that's because prayer is a kind of friendship, and friendships grow gradually and slowly, and they develop in that way, and in fits and starts, and sometimes with setbacks, and all of these things.
Yeah, and I feel like prayer is an act of faith, and I don't know God's mind, so why did He have prayer kind of unfold in our lives in the way that He did? I don't know, but let's take some guesses. If we were to like pray for something or whatever, and it just kind of happens, well, what would the temptation be? Like, well, I'm
Yeah.
in control,
Yeah.
and so you can totally understand that the journey, the pilgrimage of faith that we're meant to go on is kind of an exodus of self in order to fully pursue and be filled by God. That if prayer was something that was like utterly responsive, there's so many things that you could say about this. One, we would perhaps think that we're in control, which is not the case. The second thing is that we think we know what we want, which is also definitely empirically not the case. And so, I mean, there's been so many times in my life where, I was praying for a certain thing or there was a difficult season. And then, over whether it's months or years, you get on the other side of it and you kind of look back and you're like, whew, I'm so glad it went this way, which was not what I had wanted it to be. You're like, well, there's the wisdom of God, and there's often some good being worked in us. So it's like, it's a good thing that when we're praying, there's things that are both taking time to kind of unfold. It unfolds in a way that we often didn't think. And often it's imperceivable. We don't know what is happening. Prayer is changing us, but we can't always tell.
That's right. And I think, this example, it's helpful, I think, to think about like, what prayer is not, right? And this idea where it's like, I give God my wish list and He just like checks it off
got
for
it,
me,
yeah.
right? And there can be all sorts of problems with that, right? We don't really know ourselves. We think we're deserving of it, right? We think that we're in control. I think, we can also, we look for quick gratification, and we can think that prayer is supposed to be like therapy, where I come out feeling really good maybe, or like I've accomplished overcoming something. And that could happen, but that's not fundamentally what prayer is, or I think we can think prayer is a performance, but it's not that either. It's where it's kind of like, I sit down, I like go through my rubric, I check off, collecting my thoughts, I journal, all the things. None of those things are bad. They can all be tools that are really helpful. But prayer is more than the performance of like, this list of things. And then related to that, I think we can think that prayer it's supposed to be somehow like hard and complicated. Like if I just get the secret key of like arranging the sections of my prayer in this way, like I'm going to have illumination.
It's so true. Yeah. Like, or you can arrange a really stringent prayer schedule. I'm going to do the morning offering. I'm going to do a morning examination of conscience. I'm going to do a holy hour. I'm going to do a rosary. I'm going to do the Angelus. I'm going to do another, like all of those are great things, none of which we would want to, not encourage people to do. However, we have to recognize that, as you said, that prayer is a relationship. All of these things are tools to facilitate them, and a lot of them are tried and true. But at the end of the day, it's like prayer is not something that should be forgotten or let go of very easily ever. It shouldn't ever be let go of, nor should it be something that we construct in the perfect way that we think we have to do and think like, if I do XYZ thing, therefore I'm living in perfect harmony with God. It's like, it's a relationship. There's a back and forth, there's an openness. It takes different forms, especially as we kind of grow in our life of Christian discipleship, that it's this mystery that here's what I think is worth highlighting. It's a mystery received. It's not a mystery that's fabricated by us or like, kind of built up on some scaffolding that we're in control of. The Catechism says that prayer is fundamentally, it's a grace. It's a gift that must be received and then kind of embodied within us over time in the form of a relationship.
Talking about this makes me think of, I know you love the Sermon on the Mount, and I do too. And when Jesus gives the Sermon on the Mount, he covers a lot of different themes. And one of the central themes and passages has to do with prayer, right? And, it's noteworthy that when teaching on prayer, Jesus doesn't say, and when you pray, follow these 6 to 10 steps in this order, right? Instead, he gives us a very simple prayer, actually, the Our Father.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's noteworthy. We can sometimes overlook that the Our Father is basically a list of petitions. And what is important about that, I mean, the fathers and doctors of the church will see in these petitions, St. Augustine will call it a kind of summary of the gospel, which is fascinating.
That is
But
fascinating.
it's a good reminder that sometimes we can forget that prayer is relatively simple.
Yes.
And some of the simplest forms of prayer, like asking God for things, I think we can be tempted as we advance in Christian maturity to think like, you know what, at some point I'm kind of going to leave the petitions behind, like, because I don't want to just ask God for things. I mean, I don't want to be like asking God for this, that, and the other thing, because I don't really need his help.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but wait a second. That's actually exactly what I need. And when we talked about humility is acknowledging our proper place before God,
Yep.
which indeed he has told us to call him friend, but we are as beggars before God. We can do nothing without him. And so petition is kind of the essential form of prayer, if you will. And so we never leave that behind. And that's a simple thing.
It is. And if you think about that, as in the Our Father, God is saying, I'm your father. And think about being a parent, you're like, you never want your kids to stop asking you for things. Now, the nature and way and perhaps frequency or depth of asks changes, which is a good thing. There's a maturity there. But no parent ever wants to stop being, they want to help their kids. God, it's foolish to think, I'm not going to ask God for things. You just don't want it to only be that.
Yeah. I was just reading a beautiful poem the other day by Robert Hugh Benson.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing is super beautiful. I'll have to bring it on the show one of these days and we can talk about it. But the last line is, I am in all ways his debtor, and yet he bids me call him friend.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that gets at some of the dynamics here in prayer.
Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to highlight, and then see if you have anything before we turn to questions, is, truly the Catechism paragraphs are beautiful, highly recommend. The ones that I'd really loved were 2725 through 2728 for anyone out there who wants to take a look at them. They're great. But it's called the Battle of Prayer. So you were highlighting that prayer should be simple. in its most pure form, it's a conversation between friends, deep friends. So it should be simple, but it is not. That doesn't mean it's easy. And the Catechism highlights, well, what makes it difficult? And it says, first, it's ourselves, which is so true. Before I even did a little bit of reading and thinking about doing this episode, and we kind of were thinking about the question, why is prayer so hard? I was like, well, because I have a divided heart. I mean, that is why, which is pride. But it's like, I have a divided heart. I'm thinking about a million different things that have to be done. And if you dig a layer deeper than that, it's like, and it's easy for me to supplant the importance of some of those over God, which is foolish, but that's the temptation. So it is a battle. I take great consolation in that, because sometimes I feel bad. I'm like, why am I so bad at praying? Or why was I so incredibly distracted? Or why am I like, Lord, I'm sorry, I'm not better at this. I'm sorry I can't open up more easily. I'm sorry that I can't stay attentive to you. I'm sorry that I can't stop thinking about my to-do list. I'm sorry I can't stop thinking about this. And then it's like, I love that the Catechism is like, no, it is a battle. It is a real battle, and that's okay. So for all of those out there that are struggling to pray, we all are. You're in good company. The Catechism acknowledges. So the last thing I want to say, this is in paragraph 2728. And it's talking about the things that get in the way of us praying, or failures to pray, so to speak. And it says, the conclusion is always the same. What good does it do to pray? Which is kind of what you were talking about. Like, this isn't effective. This isn't, nothing's happening. This isn't doing anything. So that's always such a temptation. What good is it to do? Then it says, to overcome these obstacles, we must battle to gain humility, trust, and perseverance, which is just so fantastic. As you were talking about, humility is so important, because that's this like poverty of spirit, this fundamental disposition that I am in need. I'm a beggar before God. God, I need you. Trust, this like enduring trust that God is real. He loves me. He's taking care of me despite how things may seem, and that this is the most important thing I can do, and that I can live in union and friendship with Christ. Trust. And then you need perseverance. So I was like, that to me was, that stuck with me in many, many ways. What do we need as we kind of confront this battle, this beautiful battle of prayer? We need humility, trust, and perseverance.
Yeah, and I think, we live in a world that talks a lot about productivity,
Yep.
Efficiency, productivity routines and apps and all these things. And I really like a lot of these things, but prayer is an act of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beautiful sermon of St. John Henry Newman, The Ventures of Faith, he kind of makes this point, like, if somebody, I'm paraphrasing, and he's much more eloquent, but if somebody looks at your life, are they going to see that you have staked everything on the gospel?
Mm-hmm.
And prayer is an act of faith that, in like a first moment without any other consideration, is a kind of sacrifice, right? In a world that's so focused on productivity, efficiency, getting things done, to say, you know what, I'm going to set aside 15 minutes to do nothing productive. That is a venture of faith, right? To commit to that every day, someone from the outside would look at that and say, that makes no sense unless you believe in God, right? And so I think it's a beautiful little venture of faith that we make. It's a beautiful sacrifice that we make to say, Lord, out of the 100 and whatever things going on in my life right now today, I am going to carve out and protect and offer up as a sacrifice these precious minutes that I'll never get back, right? For love of you. And that, I think, is very much at the heart of prayer and takes a lot of humility, a lot of perseverance, and all these things.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Oh, yeah.
I had a priest in confession once tell me, because I confessed that I wasn't praying as much as I should be, and I was really busy. And the priest told me that, like, oh, well, the saints say that when you're really busy, you should pray double. So instead of just praying the normal amount that you would pray twice as much. What do you guys think about that?
This has come down in a couple of like semi-legendary forms. So St. Francis de Sales is said to have said basically this, like, everybody should try to pray a half hour a day. If you're really busy, an hour. And then the other version is Mother Teresa. Oh, I thought it was John Paul II. Anyway, it's like, I think the story that I've heard of John Paul II is a young bishop comes up and he's kind of like, Holy Father, I'm really busy. And the Holy Father's counseling him, and you pray an hour a day. It's like, whoa, I don't know if that's going to work. I've got so many things to do. And John Paul II is kind of like, oh, yes, it won't work. You need 2 hours.
Okay. Yeah. The Mother Teresa one is one of the sisters comes to her and is like, Mother, we have so much to do. There's so many people in need. Could we maybe cut down our holy hour in the morning so that we could, basically do? And she says, and she doubles it. You can do 2 hours now, because what they need, they do not need you. They need Jesus, and they will not receive Jesus if you are not spending time with him. Okay.
So in answer to the question, I would say, no, you don't need to double your time. But I think the reason for that, I think it's a little bit of a rhetorical device, or maybe something you could do for a short while. But the rhetorical device is, it's doubly important for you to pray when you're tempted to dismiss the importance and the place of prayer. And so I think that is absolutely true. And one way of expressing that is to literally double your time in prayer. But I think you could also, so to speak, double down on your time in prayer and kind of accomplish the same thing.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add, but the one thing that I have thought, my wife and I have talked.
I thought you didn't have anything to add.
I do, but it's not. Your answer was perfect.
Taylor likes to talk.
No, the thing that my wife and I have been challenged. We have 4 little kids, work, very busy, like so many people out there, and thinking along similar lines, like it's just I can't, allocate enough time. But really, for anybody out there to truly challenge yourself and like, well, how are you spending your time? Like my wife and I have, how much time mindlessly doing things on our phones that we don't need to do, or maybe it shows at the end of the day. And it's like, no, for us, there was a moment where we had to realize like, okay, we're having a harder time finding time to pray in the morning. and we were both kind of like, we just can't get up earlier. Like our kids are up in the middle of the night and blah, blah, blah. But we realized we're like, well, what we could do is go to bed a little earlier and get up 15 minutes earlier. And so I think that, the only thing I would add, not because there was an insufficiency, is just simply to be like, really do challenge yourself about, well, where are there genuine moments of time where you could create and give more time to God?
And I will say, like,
oh, now you're adding something to my adding something.
Lots of adding going on here. This goes back, I can't remember whether you said this, Emily, or you, Taylor, but the thought that came to my mind is, finding time for prayer, distraction in prayer, thoughts going every which way. I have found very often, and more, I would say, that a lot of my prayer is just spent saying, I'm sorry.
I know.
For like the quality of prayer. I'm sorry. And there's something, I don't want to like over relate to the holiness of the saints, but sometimes we read about the saints and this kind of like a very apologetic character they have about so many things, and we might kind of tend to dismiss that because we don't see as they see. But I think this is one little way that the ordinary among us can relate to that, which is I have become so much more aware of how bad I am at praying, at least to the extent that I think about prayer as being something I do, which is a little false to begin with. But I think it's actually a beautiful thing for prayer to be filled with I'm sorries and Lord have mercy,
Lord
help me, Lord. I can't do this without you. Like that has become so clear to me over the years, right? That I cannot do this without you.
Yep, and that it is a gift.
Nice. Thanks.
Yep.
Well, we'll dive into the audience questions now.
Let's hear it.
If anyone has questions for Taylor and Scott to answer on practicingcatholicpodcast.com, you can submit all your questions, and we'll try to get to them in our episodes. So, okay, first audience question: How do you balance or choose which devotions to do? There are so many between the Rosary, Divine Mercy Chaplet, saints, novenas, etc., that it's impossible to do them all. So how do you choose?
This is a great question. I've had this question. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
You go.
Okay. I think it's a great question. So I've wrestled with that. I've had people ask me similar questions, so it's a good question. I think that in the church's tradition, there is just a plethora of devotions, which this person is asking about, and it's okay. What is a good thing to do is to expose oneself to the devotions that feel as though there is some type of affinity for them, and see which kind of sings to the heart, to put it in one way. So I think it's good. None of these are mandatory. Some have probably more weight within the tradition than others, right? Like the Rosary and Divine Mercy Chaplet. But recognize that, again, these are tools, not to instrumentalize the devotional life, but they are tools. They are meant to facilitate an encounter with God and his church and his saints. And so see which ones you're drawn to. I think that the Lord draws us. We're not meant to do all of them. That's okay. Don't feel bad if you pick up a great devotion of a great saint and it's just not really working, and to put it back down. That's okay. They're going to be all right. So for my advice, or what has been fruitful in my spiritual life, is to have the freedom to pick some up, put them back down, keep others, but do ones that seem to kind of be fruitful in my life.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason we have so many devotions is not that all would do all of them, it's that all would find some that work, for them. And I think that approach is a good one. It's what I've done too. I think the Lord introduces us to these things in his providence, often in a certain way. And yeah, there's there's nothing lost or no shame in sort of picking something up and you're kind of like, I didn't do it for me, and that's okay. I think one reason to just kind of treat these with a kind of appreciation, but also lightness, is because, number one, none of them are, strictly speaking, required. And number two, there's always a temptation to kind of turn a devotion into a superstition, right? So like a novena is a great thing, but there can be a tendency to turn a novena into a kind of superstition. Like, if I just do these 9 days, or these 9 novenas over 9 months of novenas,
yes,
then it'll work. I mean, it doesn't work that way, and that's actually superstition. So, that's maybe a little word of caution, but other than that, these devotions are a treasure, right?
Yeah, they're a gift.
And we should fall in love with this treasure.
Yep.
Along the lines of devotion, the next question, I don't like praying the rosary. Am I a bad Catholic?
Yeah, that's, I think what we just said, that none of these devotions are required.
Yep.
So no, I don't think someone's a bad Catholic. I do think that the rosary occupies a special pride of place among devotions. It's been so often recommended by the church, so often prayed and recommended by the saints, that what I think I would say is, a person is not a bad Catholic if they don't pray the rosary.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it can be very, very helpful to ask, what about the rosary challenges me? Because at the most fundamental level, the rosary is a prayerful meditation on the mysteries of Christ's life. And that is something that if you do not love the mysteries of Christ's life, if you don't pray in some way about the mysteries of Christ's life, then that would be a problem. So inasmuch as the rosary is pretty much that, I think it can be very fruitful to ask, what's my hang up with the rosary? Where do I stumble? I know for myself early on, the rosary was pretty difficult for me. And the two things that were a bit of a problem, one was I was at a place where I was questioning my Catholic faith, and I wasn't quite sure about the Marian component, right? And so that was a little bit of a hang up, but it was one of the things that in kind of asking the question and learning more, I realized, no, actually this is perfectly fine. Like, this is a Christological prayer, a prayer about Christ. And our Blessed Mother kind of walks alongside and prays with us, And the second thing was the repetition of it. And I think that sort of seemed a little bit boring, or like, don't I have more to contribute to prayer than just repeating these rote prayers? But then I just kind of realized that, number one, that's not an obstacle to meditation, and number two, to worry about it too much is kind of over-exaggerating my contribution to prayer, where it's kind of like, can't I do more than just say these words over and over again? Often I can't. Like, when I look at how my mind runs from topic to topic and distraction, like, actually, if I can just say the words and say them well, like, I'm doing pretty well.
There's been a kind of something that's developed, especially as we've had kids. I used to have a little bit, I don't know if I'd say it this much, but a little bit of a superstitious view of the rosary, that if I prayed the rosary in its entirety, that like, it was a really good thing. Like, not even if I was asking for something, but it was a checking the box a little bit, especially early, which in some respects I'm grateful for, because it kind of got me in the habit. But I remember, especially as we started having kids, it was harder to find time to pray the rosary, just like life is chaos, especially as you're kind of moving into that state of life where you haven't really got your bearings and you're just thrown off. And so I used to have like tremendous guilt if I didn't pray a rosary in a day, or if I didn't finish a rosary in a day. And I would say over time, I've had what I would consider, and I'd be curious what you think, a more kind of healthy understanding of the devotional life of the rosary, where for my wife and I now, like, there's a freedom of, we'll try to pray the rosary, and if our kids wake up screaming and we don't finish it that day, it's totally fine. Like, it's not invalid, and it's not like we didn't miss the rosary box that week. So just recognizing that these are devotional tools, they're gifts, they're treasures of the church that are not superstitious, where if I don't complete every prayer in like perfect contemplation, and that, even with our little kids right now, one thing that my wife and I do, we'll actually only pray 3 Hail Marys. This is with them. We'll pray the rosary, but we'll do 3 instead of 10.
Yeah. Some people call that a Trinity rosary.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel so legitimized.
Totally justified.
It's awesome. But the kids, it's just better because they can't contain themselves for very long.
But you still work through all the mysteries.
We work through all the mysteries, and we do 3. It's obviously much faster, but it's more peaceful for Brittany and I too, because we can actually do it without trying to like hold them in. So it's kind of developed over time.
Yeah, I think, having a love for the rosary that kind of can embrace some flexibility, whether in like, maybe we don't get to it every day, or maybe we do a Trinity rosary and shorten it, or maybe we just do a couple mysteries, but we change, I think that's great. There are some families I know who like have their family rosary every day.
Yep.
And I think what's really beautiful about that is it's such an established custom and practice and a unifying point for their family that's fantastic, But it's not like, again, it's not a strict requirement. Okay, I have a lightning round question for Taylor.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Are you ready?
For Emily too, or just for me?
Oh, yeah, let's do both of you.
Okay.
This is good. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Is it necessary to pay attention when you're praying?
Emily, is it
Sorry,
necessary
to pay attention?
to pay
while you're
attention?
praying?
Well, what does necessary mean?
Also,
for
what
it to
does
be
paying
a
attention mean?
Is it all right? Nope.
Okay, here's the way
don't
St.
give
Thomas
qualifiers.
phrases it. Here's the way St. Thomas phrases it. This
Okay.
is straight out of the Summa.
Okay, we're failing in the lightning aspect of the lightning round.
Is attention necessary to accomplish the end of prayer?
Oh goodness, no.
I'm also going to say no.
And I am on firm footing on this.
All right.
Because
so
God spoke to St. Joseph in his dreams, and he wasn't, like paying
Brilliant.
attention.
That's not where I was going.
That's
I
my
like that.
reasoning.
Wow.
I have a different-
Would you call that prayer? That's the real question.
Oh,
But we
he
should
comes
bracket
back
that.
with it.
That's
Excellent rebuttal.
Is prayer, though, just communicating
This is
with
so
God?
good.
And if God communicates to me or to St. Joseph through dreams,
Interesting.
can it count as prayer?
That's good. Is there a difference between revelation and
Yes.
prayer? Because that would be a special
Oh,
kind
yeah,
of
that's true.
revelation.
All right.
What were you thinking, Taylor?
I was thinking, so you may be swaying me one direction. I still think it's no. And the thing that I was thinking about was friendship. Is two friends could be sitting in a room, not talking nor dialoguing, but just simply being together that has a good contained within it. Now, I think the question on that is, well, what does that exactly mean in relation to God? And is attention necessary for that to be fruitful? I think the best place to locate this counterexample that I'm providing is adoration. If one was to be in adoration in the presence of the Lord in the sacramental reality, would it be necessary for someone to be attentive to that for it to be called prayer? Which I'm now talking myself a little bit into a yes answer.
Well, I was thinking the same thing. I'm pretty sure there's a now Saint Carlo Acutis quote where he talks about sitting in the presence of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament and how it's like sitting in front of the sun. Like when you sit in front of the sun, you get like a suntan or a sunburn because you're in the presence of the sun. And you don't have to do anything to get that. You just have to be in the presence of the sun.
But the question is that, because one could say that one could be in a totally receptive mode to receive the grace of God by virtue of being in his presence. But the question is that still prayer? Is that prayer? Right? Because wasn't the question prayer?
I think for St. Carlo Acutis, I think out of his humility, he is describing like his situation before the Blessed Sacrament. I think the reason that it's not exactly like the sun is because believer and non-believer are both tanned by the sun, but a non-believer is not necessarily transformed by
All right,
walking
I'm
by
flipped.
tabernacle.
It's a yes.
That's fair.
Attention is necessary.
Attention is necessary. St. Thomas says that attention is necessary for the full fruit of prayer, you could say, but not for 2/3 of it. He says there are three ends of prayer, and two of them don't require attention. One is that prayer is meritorious, and the other is that you can petition and receive an answer to that petition without real attention. And the reason is because the mere fact that you go into prayer with some intention carries through the prayer.
It's an act of faith.
Yes, but for the full effect of prayer, which includes the kind of refreshment of the mind and soul, you do have to pay attention for that. But what I love about this answer, St. Thomas is such a realist. The next question is, do you have to spend a long time in prayer? And he's basically like, you should pray as long as, there's fervor in your heart, and when it's not, then like you're done. Now he's not talking about your commitment to pray the hours or something like that, which would be under obedience. But St. Thomas has a very realistic but beautiful and deep view of prayer where he sort of says, look, we should try to pay attention, and that's going to be the best way to pray. But we're not all there all the time, and it's still good, Or yes, we want to pray the ideal is to kind of be in a loving gaze with the Father for, a long time. But we're also human. We can't maintain that forever, and when that stops, move on to other things.
Okay.
And he's a great realist.
So glad that I was right, and then I was wrong, then right.
Anyway,
that's great. All right,
Emily,
I like
do
it.
you have other questions?
Okay, one last question. You can try to give your quickest answer. How do you remain consistent and persevere in your growth in holiness, especially in times of dryness, which you could say times of dryness in prayer?
Okay. I think that this one, it is helpful to use the sports analogy, one that we opened with. So when you're working at a skill, so like soccer, and I was trying to become better at soccer, and I'm learning to pass a ball better. You just have to do it a lot. For much of that time in which you're just putting in day after day, hour after hour practice, there's a lot of ups and downs. Sometimes you're noticeably getting better. Sometimes you feel like you're getting worse. Sometimes you're like, this is a terrible idea and I'm so sick of doing this and I want to quit. But the reality is, over the span of time, you are growing in that skill. I think that is a helpful analogy for prayer as it relates to dryness, that there's periods of real fruit that is experienced, which is always a gift within prayer. And then there's periods of dryness that are a gift too. And it's a gift for a couple of reasons. One is you're still receiving. Two, an opportunity is being opened up to persevere, to pursue the giver of the gift and not the experience of the gift. But in faith as Christians, we know that we must live out the reality of our Christian life in prayer. And it's just there is something that is true about the day in and day out persevering nature that you just keep going in periods of fruitfulness and dryness. Last thing on this, and then I'll stop, is I've had someone ask me the question of, should I stop going to adoration if it's really dry? Someone asked me that, like, I really don't like it. I don't like adoration. I'm experiencing nothing. Like, I'm going to stop. Like, I feel like I'm like, not necessarily, they didn't use the language like of offending God, but they're like, I can't really think that God wants me there if I'm just like totally distracted. And my response, not that it necessarily is perfect, but I think I'm on sure footing, is there's actually something very pure about the gift of going to adoration or praying in the morning or praying whenever, when there is that absence of felt sentiment or emotion. Now, the desire is that we are experiencing some of that, but we can't control that. And so I think there's actually a purity of the act, in some respects, the act of the will to pursue God in the way that we know we should when the experiences and the emotions are being withheld. That's a very pure gift because you're not feeling a benefit. So I think that the question was how to persevere through periods of dryness. Mm-hmm. I think it's helpful to know, like, look, you're going to experience dryness for one. It's not something's wrong with you or something's wrong with your prayer, but it's actually in those moments where like your fidelity is really given, it's tried, and that perseverance is a real gift you can make to God. And in some respects, it's almost more important to do so when you're in those periods of dryness.
Yeah, I think when you say it's a pure gift, it's sort of like it's even more selfless.
Yes.
Right. And just, maybe for our viewers or listeners who haven't heard the term like dryness, or some people will talk about aridity, spiritual writers and ordinary Catholics too can talk about like dryness or aridity in prayer. And this is like the opposite. What tends to happen is when we first approach the Lord or take our faith seriously or begin to pray, often that time is filled with what we call consolations, where it's sort of like, we have feelings of joy, of love, of gratitude. We have deep insights maybe as we're reading scripture or kind of getting to know the Lord for the first time. Very much like when, at the beginning of a romantic relationship, there are lots of emotions and they carry us along, right? Dryness or aridity tends to refer to when there are less of those consolations or fruits, right? Where the emotions are a little bit like stale or static. You don't have as many insights. You read scripture and it's kind of like, I don't hear the Lord speaking. Mm-hmm. So, and this is, I think, what's behind your point, right? Is that in those moments when the affective or emotional dimension isn't kind of like propelling us along, like when we're falling in love, all the more so do we see that love is an act of the will, mm-hmm. that a self-sacrificial and self-giving love thinks less of self and more of the beloved. And so to be able to turn to God and say, here I am, Lord. Yeah. I'm not getting a lot out of this, but this isn't about me. This is about you. And that's a beautiful thing. And to remember that, I think, can help persevere.
Totally agree.
Nice. Give me your challenges for the week.
Challenge. I think for me, I just was thinking about the saying I'm sorry in prayer and just kind of continuing and trying to be better at being honest with the Lord. And when prayer is not going well to sort of all appearances, to just be able to say, gosh, I'm really sorry, Lord. Help me to do better.
That's good. Mine is, I'm trying to get very kind of concrete and specific. So one of the temptations I have had is that, like, if I can't really have like an adequate space for prayer, like I won't do it in some regards. So like if it's like, well, I don't have a full half hour in the morning before the kids get up and to spend my time. So not in place of morning prayer, still working on that. But the thing that I'm going to do is on a daily basis for the next week to try to find 3 minutes. I'm trying to be very concrete. 3 minutes, whether that's I can step in. We have a lovely chapel here at work, which is a real gift, whether it means stepping in that, whether it means going on a little bit of a 3-minute walk outside, sitting at my desk for 3 minutes, or 3 minutes at home after the kids go to bed. 3 minutes of just calling my mind to God, trying to push out distractions, and just giving him a 3-minute gift spontaneously. Because my temptation is to like overstructure sometimes. And I love how when you read the saints, they always talk about these kind of spontaneous prayers. And I'm going to try to find a 3-minute, there's always a 3-minute window somewhere in a day. Find 3 minutes, and rather than grabbing my phone, rather than doing something else, 3 minutes I'm going to try to spontaneously find to give to God.
The 3-minute gift.
The 3-minute gift.
That's great.
It's a new
Coined
podcast.
term right now.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, that's it. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Prayer. We'll see you next time. But before we do that, please like and subscribe on YouTube, on podcasts. That is so helpful to us. We want to know that these are great episodes and so that we can keep serving you. So thank you again for joining us. We will see you next time. God bless you.